Okay, so we're going to talk about movies tonight. I'm tired of politics, too. I agree with you. This is the way movies are made. I want to give you an idea here so that we can prove our premise tonight that nothing succeeds like excess. So, okay, now here's a best-selling book. It's a best-selling book, and this is what the poster would look like if they made it into a movie. It's called The Last Best Chance. And there's a certain suggestion here. Here's a president who looks remarkably like Robert Redford. That's credible, right? And here's the seal of the President of the United States. Here's a map of the Middle East, vaguely. The marketing line, that's what they used to sell the movies, of course, says, it was not just another day at the office. See, so we know this is the kind of book you might pick up if you go to a bookstore. So how does this become a movie? Okay, we'll start off and we'll get our cast of characters here. So the Japanese come over and they buy a studio. And the head of the studio, who at one time was a hairdresser, and he's immediately fired by the Japanese. So let's get him up here. And in order to fire him, you don't want to take away all his dignity. So you say, you let him say to the press, I'm leaving so I can do something more creative. And they give him several $1 million, and they let him open an office, and they arrange to have the first look at his work. That's a cinema term, the first look at his work. But he hasn't got any work, right? So he calls his agent, and he says, what should I do? I've just become an independent producer. So the agent says, you have to buy a book and make it into a movie. So the producer says, well, would you go with me? I've never been to a bookstore alone, So, no, not like that. He says, let me look at the New York Times here. He says, the #1 book in the fiction list is The Last Best Chance. So fly the writer to Hollywood. So they fly the novelist out to Hollywood. He meets the producer. The producer says, it's a pleasure to meet you. It's a fantastic book. And the writer says, did you read the book and you liked it? And the producer says, a book as great as yours, you don't need to read it. So then he says, now the agent meets with the producer and he says, so you got to get a script. That has to be adapted. So you get a real great writer. They get a guy like Frank Pearson, right? Frank Pearson gets $400,000 here, so we hire him. Now, you've got to attach names to this, or his boss, his new boss, won't think he's a credible producer. So they call Dustin Hoffman, and he says, I'll give you a definite maybe. I may read it, So he's attached to the project now. Now people say, this is beginning to, it's starting to look real now. Got a movie here, a great novel written by Frank Pearson, and we got Dustin Hoffman. So Hoffman is in, but Hoffman looks at this script and he says, it's good, but it's too political. I'd like it to be more, it's too much about what it's about. He's that kind of guy, Dustin Hoffman. So Hoffman says, I've got to get a rewrite on the picture. Let's get Alvin Sargent to rewrite it. He gets another $400,000. We got him here. So Alvin Sargent is in here. He's going to rewrite the movie. So he's busy rewriting the movie. Nobody has to do anything. They can remain attentive. Now Hoffman is trying to figure it out, and he says, I know what's wrong with the movie. The president has no interior life. He's like a robot. He's a symbol, like a face on a bill. He said he's got to have a wife and a family and some kind of problems at home. So he calls Warren Beatty, whom he trusts, and he says, Warren, what actresses do you respect? What a straight lines, I tell you. So Warren says, I respect Madonna. So Madonna's attached to the project. You have to make her a firm offer of $4 million. Got her on the project now. And it's beginning to look like a movie. Except the Japanese are saying, well, wait a minute. This money, we got $13 million here and nobody knows what script there. What are we talking about here, right? So the producer goes to dinner with Francis Coppola, and he says to him, I got problems. I can't get a commitment from Hoffman. If I don't have Hoffman, I won't have Madonna. And Hoffman doesn't want his script, and I'm not sure he'll want Alvin Sargent's script when it comes in, because they had a fight since he commissioned them to write the script, and they only talk to each other through my office. So he said, these are administrative problems. So Coppola says, I know about trouble, I made Apocalypse Now. There's a possibility I would come aboard the picture, So he says, if I do, I have to have my own people. So who are you thinking about? He says, I think that Robert Redford is Plastic Man, and I think that Dustin Hoffman is not credible as the president. So the producer says, who's credible? And Coppola says, Al Pacino. Producer says, I don't see Al Pacino as a president of the United States. Coppola says, I've only been on a picture a day. You're already tying my hands. I'm off the picture. Off the picture. Okay, now it's been a year, and the Japanese are looking at the highly vaunted bottom line, and there's no money coming into the studio. So the Japanese say, the problem is that these guys don't know how to do anything except spend money. So they hire a 31-year-old television guy from CBS, and they make him the head of the studio. Oh, we don't know who he is, but, named Jeff, one of those guys. And with a J. And Jeff comes in and he says, hey, wait a minute. Our movie's so different from television. I mean, let's face it, And the thing that sells is comedy. He said, I don't want to see a picture about terrorism. I don't want to see a picture about hostages. I don't want to see any political pictures. I don't even vote, and I don't think any of my friends do. So they're now into the second rewrite, of course, with Alvin Sargent. So these guys are really in trouble. So the new head of the studio, Jeff, says, we have a commitment from Eddie Murphy. Still owes us a commitment. We'll put Eddie Murphy into this picture. Producer says, okay, Madonna's gone. Dustin Hoffman has left the project. We'll put Eddie Murphy in. So Eddie Murphy can't play the president. He says, it's not going to be that. It's going to be a comedy. It'll be subliminally about the presidency. We'll make it into a comedy. So they call in the marketing people, and they say, all right, get rid of that, the last best chance for peace. Forget all that. It's going to be Eddie Murphy, crazy guy, and we'll call the picture So Help Me. So Eddie Murphy has a meeting that day with the coalition of black Muslims and decides that the picture is going to be trouble. He drops out of the picture. That's gone. Picture is no longer called that. The picture is in limbo again, which means his career is in limbo. The producer, now the studio, his bosses are getting nervous. So the producer says, I know what's wrong with this. I tried to make too big a picture. What I've got to do is make a prestige picture and release it in one theater with 57 seats. On Beverly Boulevard, and forget all the pretension. I'll make it a picture that's a critical success. I'll get James Woods. Nobody ever argues with James Woods, and it won't be. It'll be a small, meaningful picture. But of course, we'll have to change marketing if we do that. We'll have to call the picture. He'll be a guy who works for the president, and his wife is dying. Maybe we can get Julia Roberts to play his wife. She's dying. She gets $7 million, but she might do this because she likes the idea of dying. So we'll get her. And we'll call the picture A Fresh Breeze from the Sea. Be a small picture. Okay, so that goes on. They think about that for about a weekend, and then that doesn't work. So now the producer's getting nervous, and he calls up Sylvester Stallone, and they talk on the phone, and he says to Stallone, how did you get your Ferrari in from Belgium without paying duty? That's the kind of things they talk about. And Stallone says, what are you doing now? He says, well, I've been having trouble with this. I'm trying to make this picture off this novel, and I've been having trouble with it. Stallone says, I'd love to hear it all, and I'd like to help you, but I have to go get a haircut. So the producer says, well, I'll cut your hair. Let me come over there. I used to cut, So he goes over to Stallone's house, and Stallone is with his agent. He's with his agent, Ron Meyer, works for Michael Ovitz, and they're sitting there and they say, aha, so you were frustrated, you couldn't do it, and so forth. So Ron Meyer says, well, you caught us on a very weak day because I got him $12 million for playing the arm wrestling champion of America, and I got him $20 million for Rocky IV, and I got him $25 million for Rocky V. I would like to establish a new price to show people that this guy can really act. He says to the producer, we'll make you the executive producer. We'll save your picture. He says, Sly will direct it, and Sly will write it. Sly will be in it, and the producer says, does he want to play the president? He said, we weren't thinking of it that way. Sly, what can we do with it? So Stallone says, he ponders, he says, I think what happens is the president is a peripheral character, maybe played by Jason Robards or somebody that everyone respects in Hollywood. And he says, Rocky goes to Libya and he fights the Libyan champion and he wins. He's got the belt on, heavyweight belt. He's leaving the country, and Muammar Gaddafi says, I don't want that belt leaving Libya. We waited too long. I'm making Rocky a Libyan citizen. with no passport. So the president calls in Rambo and asks him to rescue Rocky. Then that way, Stallone will be playing two roles for which you'll receive $30 million, which is only fair, says the agent. And the picture will now be called Rocky VI, Rambo 4. Right? We'll be right back with Robert Towne. See you in a minute.